up, long players? Welcome to the Long Play Listening Party short episode this week. Just checking in with Cory Kibler, returning guest. What's up, Cory?
Hey.
And we are putting something in your feed, whether if you're celebrating a holiday this week or not, or if you're celebrating Indigenous Peoples Month, maybe. I assume, I should have looked this up beforehand. I assume that choice to juxtapose those things was intentionally made by the Indigenous folks who advocated for Indigenous Peoples Month. I really hope that wasn't a colonizer decision to put those two together.
I know.
I'm going to have to look at it. I'm going to put it in the show notes because now I need to know that. Anyway, here to talk with Cory about projects and kind of the point. We both got things going on. We're going to just do a quick update, but this is sort of less self-promotion. It is self-promotion, but kind of less self-promotion and more sharing process under the idea and assumption that, like, as artists and as creative people, whether you're a cook or a painter, you know, whatever your sort of creative thing or things are, I think learning about process is fascinating, and it gives you tools to keep in the back of your mind for when you're stuck, or if you want to try something different, maybe, or if you just are looking for some affirmation. You know, there's different ways of doing things, and that's a fun space to explore. So we're going to share some of the ways that we're working and hope that it sort of sparks something for you. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah. Yes.
It's nice to see you. I don't think you've been on the show since we did the Shacker mastering thing.
It was a long
which was like
time ago.
a year and a half ago, and I could not. When I looked back, I could not believe you had not been on this year.
I can't believe it was already a year and a half ago. Like, if you would have asked me yesterday, like when it was, I would have said, oh, it was like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But time doesn't mean anything anymore.
It doesn't.
So
no.
we are.
that Shacker. This is how my weird brain thinks of things. That Shacker episode was like 3% of my entire lifespan ago.
Oh
like, of
God.
the time, if the time I've spent conscious on this earth is 100%, that Shacker episode is like 3% ago.
Oh my God. I like that. I like looking at it that way.
It's weird to me that it's a measurable percentage.
Yeah, totally. It should be like mathematically nothing, but
right. That's how it
was.
Emotionally, that's how it feels. It feels like it should be nothing.
Yeah.
All right. So Cory, you got several projects cooking, like normal, but like, tell us, you want to tell us about VanRipper and Galactifader, or do you want to tell us about your novel, or what do you want to talk about?
I'll just kind of gloss over a few things that I have, like, super real quickly. So VanRipper and Galactifader is the hip hop project I have with a high school friend named Mike, who's a professional musician and teacher who lives in LA. We went to high school together. That's been thrilling. Somehow over the few years, we've amassed about an album's worth of songs, which is awesome. And I'll talk about process stuff later, but that's a really good example of something I want to share. Working on stories, trying to edit a novel. That's taken a long time, but I'm plowing through. Slowly doing some hip hop stuff with Howie, who's doing all sorts of fun stuff with his 404 and elsewhere. It's been thrilling. And I have a bunch of solo guitar-based demos in a Google Drive folder that is for sometime soon.
So tell me, let's start with the guitar demos. Like, how have you been assembling them? It's been a while since you put out a guitar kind of songwriter record.
A really long time, yeah.
Have you been recording them like one every 6 months, or do you like write them down and now you're doing a batch of demos kind of all at once, or how have you gotten to this stage?
So what would happen is that my guitar music sort of inspiration kind of ebbs and flows depending on what else is going on. But when I'm in that kind of headspace for like several months, I think like a lot of songwriters, just sort of make up melodies in my head or to hum all the time. And most of them are just goofy throwaways. Like I'm singing about taking out the trash or picking out books or something for bedtime. But sometimes I'll be goofing around or something and I'll sing a melody in the shower and I'll go, oh, wow, that's pretty good. And, you know, at the time you don't know if that's true or not necessarily, but you get inspired. And so I would just sit down and figure out what the chords were, and sing it into my phone. I'd either kind of like lorem ipsum the lyrics and just use a lot of short, monosyllabic words or whatever to just like plow through, and then see if anything else came to mind. So I have like all these demos they have at least like a verse and a chorus melody, and those parts, a lot of them don't have lyrics. None of them have full arrangement or anything like that. And the lyrics aren't final by any means. It's just from the last, like 6 or 7 years, just all of the detritus, like from sitting down. Sometimes that comes from sitting down with my guitar too. Like I'll come up with a guitar part and I'm like, wow, this is really cool, but I haven't done anything else with it.
Yeah. So what's in your Google folder is mostly voice memos, a few with guitar. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And that's mostly what you're working from.
Yeah. There's probably about 30. Most of them, I would say like 20 or 25 of them are me humming or kind of making up words along to my guitar, just like, singing into my phone. A few are, and I think you've done this a million times before, me like walking someplace and thinking of a cool melody and then breathily, huffily singing the melody into my phone and then listening back later and going, ugh. You can't like remember what chords you imagined in the background. So you kind of have to like reimagine it.
Yeah, I have to. So for me, it's those ideas that come out of dreams, or like first thing in the morning when I'm still in bed and I'm like leaned over the side of the bed on my stomach, like trying to make a pitch into the iPad. And oh man, the mouth noises I have to edit out of my own demos from those early morning sessions are horrible.
It's like, was I eating mayonnaise? Why was I eating mayonnaise? What is it about early morning that makes, it's always when I'm half asleep. Maybe it's in the middle of the night, but usually in the morning, right when I wake up, it's like I'll think of a melody or an idea. And I guess it's because I don't have like the rest of the day's junk in my head, or because I'm just tired enough to not have a filter. I think it's the filter. It's like I'm not letting myself, like I'm just thinking.
Absolutely. Meta thought. Some people, and this happens to me sometimes in the shower, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't usually get like a fresh new song in the shower, but sometimes if there's something I'm trying to write, if I'm trying to write lyrics or trying to write a melody to an instrumental demo that I've been listening to, sometimes that breakthrough will be in the shower again, where you're just, I think it's that same combination. That's the filter of the day is not really there yet. There's just no distractions yet. And also there's like a body thing, I think, of like being, or like walking, like you're saying. So doing something with your body or being in a state of like low level body stimulation and comfort kind of, that's really can facilitate creativity.
I think something I keep learning over and over and over again is that my best or most inspiring ideas come when I'm not aiming at them. I think, I don't know if we've talked about this, but I've read an article about like people who have the goal of being happy. Like if you aim directly at just happy, it's a lot harder to get there. If you're aiming at, I'm going to write a good song, it's really hard to get there. And I keep doing it. I keep sitting down and being like, I'm going to write something good because I want it to be good.
Right.
But like, it just ends in frustration. And like, right. Like I have to be, so many of my best ideas come from literal jokes. Like I'm just goofing around. Like one of my favorite songs that I've written is one of the stupidest songs I've ever written, but it's When I Was a Young Girl. And it is an absurd, kind of obscene, but also sweetly endearing song to me. And I just made it up while I was doing dishes one time to annoy my wife. And it did work. But I was like, that's really pretty. And I really like it. And I'm going to put it on a record. And I wrote it in like no time. I mean, it's a short song, but I wrote it in like literally 2 minutes. And I remember her saying, what a shame to ruin such a pretty song with such lyrics.
But no, that juxtaposition is the whole, like what makes that song work. If it was just a pretty little fluff, you wouldn't remember it necessarily.
Yeah.
And you kind of, I think on the same record, there's like a Harry Potter sort of song.
There is on a sleepover record. There's a song called Wizard Sex.
Yeah, Wizard Sex.
Yeah, that was the same sort of thing. I got done with reading Harry Potter, and I was bummed. You know, after you finish a book series, you're just like, well, now what do I do with my life? Who am I? You know, and so I had like at first I had like a sincere thought about like, well, maybe if I can't read it anymore, I'll make some like Harry Potter related art. And it was kind of a joke because like I don't know what that would look like or whatever. But then I thought about kind of like the unresolved like love stories in Harry Potter, not just like with the main characters, but with a lot of people. And I was like, that's kind of it's kind of tragic in some ways. There's a lot of like, not just unrequited, but like, you know, Shakespearean kind of tragic love, like, you know, one or both people bite it. So, yeah. So it was neat. It was neat to write a love song with that kind of backdrop. Probably the name of the song has maybe driven some people away from listening to a song that they might have liked, but I like it. That was,
we'll
that was a total
sure.
goof.
I gotta, okay. So I have two thoughts, and then I want to ask you about VanRipper and Galactifader, but like, number one, you look great. You're glowing.
Yeah. Yeah. My name
2,
on this, I think, is Glossy Filter Cory, because my camera on my Mac, it looks like I'm getting a glamour shot at the mall.
It does look like that.
Yeah.
Number 2, I would love to make a kids record with you. So start saving those like picking up books songs.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
We could. I'm dead serious, and we could do it kind of cool drug style and low key, and we could make a really great kids record. I think.
I would love that. As a parent, I take in a lot of content meant for children, and some of it is very good. I think children's programming has gotten a lot better in that adults are like, wow, okay, this is really good. I wouldn't have watched it if I didn't have a child, but it is really good. But there's a lot of children's music, especially, that I think is like, I feel like it doesn't give the kids enough credit or something. Like it's kind of spoon feeding them, and like kids get stuff and they get weird jokes and they get goofiness and they get like, you know, some abstract stuff. And they liked being talked to like they can get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's this like certain voice that people use, even with like older kids. With a baby or an infant, it makes sense, or a toddler. But when older kids like have an adult talk to them like that, they're like, what are you doing? I don't understand. So it'd be neat to make some music, legit, genuinely good music. You know, I'll aim for that. It has to be really good, first of all. But but just like, but really fun. Just like fun music that talks about things I think kids need to hear, or I would like my child to hear, at least. And like, I think it'd be a barrel of fun, like tons of tambourines and egg shakers.
Yeah.
You know?
We're putting it out there. Okay, so quick, VanRipper and Galactifader, and this kind of links up in terms of like the best ideas being a joke, right? Because the whole concept of like Cory Kibler's a rapper is like a setup. Right.
It is weird. And again, like, so for a long time, I was like, man, I love hip hop. I would love to do it in some way. But I think I mentioned this in an email, that it just felt like I didn't have like I wasn't allowed, or like I wasn't.
You don't want to be Macklemore, right?
No, exactly. No, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to, the last thing I would ever want to do is to like dismiss or disrespect or something like that, the genre, because I love it so much. So it's like, how can I do this in a way that honors the art form and that is genuinely me, because I don't want to play a character or anything like that, right? But I remembered I did do some goofy songs with my friend Mike Papani from LA. Right after college, I was like trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and I was back in Ventura, California, and he was there, and he was going to the Musicians Institute in LA, but he was back for the summer, and we just wanted to do something. And so we just started goofing around, and it was goofy. But listening back, those songs like actually had some pretty good stuff in them. And we did them really quickly, so they weren't like the best they could have been, or at least from my perspective. He did a great job, but like lyrically and performance wise, you know, that's when my work ethic, especially for recording vocals, was not what it is now. And so when he reached out again and he was like, I'm desperate, like I live in LA and I'm surrounded by these musicians, but none of them want to make anything I'm interested in. And it's actually really hard to find people. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. And he's a brilliant producer, and it's so mismatched, like as far as acumen. But it's a really good match as far as like what we both bring to the table for this. For this project. Like the things that I'm able to bring are things that are difficult for him. And I have no talent whatsoever when it comes to producing beats. I've just never tried and all that stuff. So it's great. And right, anytime I've tried to write a good song for VanRipper and Galactifader, I end up rewriting it, like every single time. And I don't know if I've learned my lesson yet, but I'm sure I will someday. But my favorite songs have just been me writing things that sound cool, like, you know, not just the prosody, but just like the message themselves or something like that, and that also feel like they're distinctly me, I guess.
Absolutely.
And that's been super fun. And I've actually I've gotten to the point where I feel like I'm actually learning some actual lessons about emceeing and writing. Like I feel like I'm like, wow, I'm like, you know, I'm not like Nas or anything. I'm getting the hang of it a little bit more than I would have, you know? There's like some style there, I guess.
There is some style, and you're bringing in your storytelling interest, right? And kind of developing a little narrative or, yeah. Right, I'm like really into it, obviously. So
yeah. Painting I love like painting a sort of like a visual, whether it's a story or not, but just like setting the scene. I think it's so great. I think for that reason, our Halloween song "R.I.P. Recent Pieces" is like my favorite song that we've done. Not just because I love Halloween, not just because Mike absolutely killed the beat. Oh my God.
There's some really cool production in that, yeah.
Oh my God, it's so good. Like we talk about time, and there's like a grandfather clock dinging, and like the sound of pop rocks being shuffled around in the bottom of a bag. Like all of it's so good. But I just told this, like it's like one of the few times in my songwriting career where I've like kind of impressed myself, where I'm like, this is great. This worked out exactly how I hoped it would. And it's just a great cautionary tale.
I'll try and I forget what VanRipper and Galactifader songs actually have on the studio computer, but I know I have some, so I'll find one and we'll go out on that to make sure that listeners can hear a track.
Sure, and I have some final waves I can send you too if you want. I can make a note of that. How we've talked a little bit about this before, but I would like to know, when you start writing lyrics or a riff or whatever, like what does that look like? Do you ever sit down to purposely write a song, or when does it go from goofing around to a song for you?
Yeah, and so this is kind of a perfect transition into the one thing I wanted to talk about, because I had a super creative day this past Sunday, and I want to talk about it a little bit just for my own kind of to get it down and like remember what this was like, because it's something that's happened to me before. But I haven't really thought to capture it and like talk about it or write about it right after it happens. So I wanted to do that. So when I started writing, I would write on legal pads, and I still do. And I would write sort of guitar tab. So the tab, I would write out the chords in tab form. If I had a melody, I would write that out in tab form, usually as a way to remember. I was not very good at notating rhythm, and so sometimes if I recorded the song relatively soon after, that was not a problem. But sometimes now, if I'm going back to really old sheets, I have no idea kind of what the tempo or the rhythm was, and sometimes it will come back to me, and sometimes it won't, and it's almost like just a new piece of raw material of like, well, this is an idea I had once. I wonder if I can I probably can't recapture the original idea, but maybe I can make something good out of it still.
Right.
And then, by the I didn't really do demos at first, but by the mid 2000s, I was more doing demos sometimes. And that would be more of an intentional, like studio demo, like sit down with a microphone and a relatively complete song and like bash it out. And then, by, I don't know, 2010 or 2012 it was more getting into that voice memo, iPad, a more informal demo, quote, air quote,
Sure.
demo kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my song sheets, I've always kept in a milk crate of manila folders once I had enough to accumulate. And there's stuff going all the way back in that milk crate. And then my recorded demos, my collection point has been iTunes ever since I've had iTunes. So I don't know, 03, 04 or something like that. That has been my collection point. And I love to do like a batch of songs that, like, I don't typically start recording until I have my songs picked out, whether it's going to be an EP or an LP, and I know what I'm trying to record. And that iTunes stuff, it's very fluid. And I will move, a demo might start and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be Howie and Scott, and it moves over to MS Ride.
Sure.
Or it moves to Cool Drugs. Or recently sometimes I'll come across something, I'll be like, oh, this actually should go on the 404 now that that's an option for me.
That's awesome.
So things move around and I make playlists and I change the library and shuffle all around. So does that give you kind of a picture of my system, such as it is?
It does, and maybe you'll talk about this a little bit. But I'm curious to know, like, okay, when you have the idea, like maybe the rough melody and some chords and stuff like that, there's a phase between having that and then having a full song where you have to make choices. And there's some things that I do, like writing, where it almost seems like the choices are obvious. Like I just need to find them and I just make them. And it is like just a fluid thing. Like it might be a little difficult. Maybe it's challenging. But then once I land on the right answer, for me, then I'm like, got it. With songwriting, sometimes I'm overwhelmed by choices like, how long do I do this part? What comes next? How do I end it? Does this chord sound better at the end of the chorus, or does this chord sound better, or something like that? So does it just like happen organically for you, or do you have to make a lot of conscious decisions about what it's going to be?
Well, of course, it's a mix of both, and the more organic, the better. And you kind of asked, so I never sit down to write, basically.
Wow. Okay.
It is always coming out of a dream. Well, a dream, that's less common. That's like 10% maybe. It's usually coming out of just noodling. So like warming up, getting ready, at band practice, just fooling around, or when I'm working on pedal designs, just, or I just sit down to goof around without necessarily intending to write, and something catches my ear.
Right. Okay.
With the synth stuff, it's really like a technical, like I'm like, okay, I want to do a song and I want to use an envelope in this certain way. So I'm starting with like a technical idea and then seeing what kind of emerges out of that. So that's a very different kind of process. But when I'm writing like songs, like guitar stuff, once I notice that I've had an initial idea that I like, I'm trying to write 3 parts. So like a verse, chorus, bridge, and I'm trying to hum a vocal melody. So in an ideal world, that little voice memo ends up having 3 instrumental sections and some idea about a vocal melody. I don't always get there. Sometimes it's only 2 instrumental sections. Sometimes it's only 1. Sometimes I can't think of a vocal. So there's a whole range of how they actually end up, but that's my goal, is like 3 instrumental ideas and a vocal melody, even for one of those sections. That's like a really good demo to me.
Do you often, when you listen back to those 3 instrumental sessions, do they often stay more or less how they were, or do you listen back later and go, oh, I would definitely change this?
My demos are not usually arranged, because that's going to end up being determined by the vocals.
Right.
But I very rarely change. If I get 3 instrumental ideas or 2, I very rarely change anything about them.
Right. Okay.
Because it's all about capturing that initial vibe for me.
Yeah.
and having that kind of beginner's mind, and that kind of, like we were talking about earlier, that stuff is like bubbling up from an unconscious place, and I want to keep as much of it as possible.
Yeah. That's a really exciting moment when you realize you have an idea that you like and you start getting really excited about it, which is also why it can be heartbreaking later when you can't remember exactly how you played it. I've learned my lesson so many times about making sure that I document some idea in some way. So I've thought so many times, like, well, this is so like spot on. I love this. Of course, I'll remember it an hour later when I get home or something. And then I get home and I just, whatever component of it, whether it was the rhythm or a note or something like that, that made it special to me, is like out the window. And then I have to like approximate or something.
Absolutely. Use those voice memos. I mean, and just the act of doing it, I think helps me at least remember and make it easier to get back to that.
Totally.
So here's what happened on Sunday.
Yeah.
So we just finished Fight Songs, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And in my different iTunes piles of different demos for different albums and different projects, I've got some good Howie and Scott material, but I wasn't sure like which one. I've got multiple kind of buckets going. And I wasn't sure which one maybe to do. And the challenge with them is that like they're all very cool. I want to do them all, but they are all kind of like smaller in scope than V for Voice.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Which is cool. Like I think I would love to do a more minimal thing, but I'm also interested, like someday I want to do another personal best, right? Like I want to top it somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so what happened on Sunday? I was clearing off some demos from the iPad, moving them into iTunes. A couple of them are these things I had slotted in my mind for the 404, but they're big, like epic kind of beats, much bigger than anything I've produced on the 404 so far.
Oh, rad.
Like I don't know how to explain it. And what happened in my imagination was I made a connection between these couple of like big 404 beats, song ideas really, and some stuff, some papers, some legal sheets of song ideas that I've never even demoed, that I wrote when I was in Africa in 2002 and 2004.
Okay.
So there's 20-year-old song ideas and song ideas from last month. And I made this connection in my imagination that like, oh, we could do, I'm calling it the party LP.
Right.
We could do this massive, and in my mind, it's like Peter Gabriel meets Jurassic 5.
Wowzers. That's great.
These big beats, huge hooks, maybe choirs and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I got really excited, and I went back, I pulled out this folder of the Africa demos and like actually started demoing them in voice memo form for the first time. This stuff has only been on paper for 20 years. Oh,
wow. Okay.
And so that's the new, like, I sent Scott this long voice memo, like telling him about, he's real busy and I didn't want to bother him, but like I finally, the crux of the voice memo was like, hey man, I finally have a vision for like how we're gonna top V for Voice, and I'm super excited about it.
That's so cool.
So that will obviously take like 10 years to produce and record.
Right.
But I know where we're headed, and that's exciting.
Like something that amazes me about your process is that you will get excited about ideas and you will work on them and you will like make a lot of progress on them, but you're not in a particular, like you're not trying to get it done or finished as soon as possible. Like just going back to your organic way of writing, I feel like you have a very organic like songwriting process too. Like you will come up with ideas and you will start working on the ideas in earnest once they kind of like make sense to you, like whether it be lyrics or, you know, riffs or something like that, you're like, okay, this is what's exciting to me now, or this is what I have new energy for. And it might ebb and flow. Like, I mean, with fight songs, it was a pretty long process, but I have no doubt, I never had any doubt that it was not going to come out or something like that. Like the whole time, I'm just like, this is going someplace. He he has a vision. He knows where it's going. Like it's going to happen for sure. Like this is moving, and it's pretty cool to have like that kind of trust or faith in the process, to just be like, I'm not even worried about losing steam on this. Like it'll always come back around. And that's one
of the blessings of like doing music as an avocation, is that no one's knocking down my door asking for another Howie and Scott record or whatever, you know, like sure. People, to the extent that anyone listens at all, I think people are happy to listen to it when it's ready. And I've never felt any pressure to work to a deadline.
Right. I think it also helps that you're organized. I mean, like, even if you don't have like an intricate filing system, the fact that you have like the Milk Crate and the iTunes demos and all those things is probably more than maybe what a lot of songwriters do. I'm sure there are a lot of like hyper organized and, people color coding, riff ideas by mood or tone or something. But when I was collecting demos for whatever I do with these solo songs, I had to scour every like device I had to like collect them all. They were everywhere. Yeah. And there was one I remember I wrote lyrics for and I sang them, and it took me like 3 days to find where it was. And it was like in an old folder in an old like iCloud space for an old phone or something like that I like emailed to my work email from my Gmail or something for some reason, So I had to go into my sent emails and look for a specific keyword that I thought I might have used to talk about that song. So
I'm so glad you found it, because I'm fairly organized for an artist, but also like what people see is the organization. What you don't see is the intuitive, like as I'm listening and I'm moving things around iTunes, like that's all kind of like intuition and like what sounds cool together, like what has the right mix of hanging together but not sounding samey.
Right. Yep.
And also what motivates it all is just the fear and the heartbreak of losing an idea, because I hate that feeling.
Yeah, it's awful. It really is. Like there's something about like it's sort of like waking up from a dream and the dream was really powerful.
Yes.
It's like waking up from a dream that was like powerful in some way, and you can't remember what happened in the dream, but you can still feel like the emotional residue from that dream. So, and then
that's exactly the feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, it's just out of reach. And you think maybe, something has to happen to you that day, basically, to jog you of the dream. It has to be like, you see a stop sign and you're like, oh yeah, I had a dream I was on a boat fishing for stop signs or whatever it is, which is my most emotional dream. But like, it's just very weird. And it is heartbreaking to like get excited to sit down to record something and realize that you can't get it back. It's gone.
Yep. Power of the voice memo.
It's neat.
And so, I guess having a consistent collection point, even if it's just a folder where you throw everything until later.
Yep.
Just having one spot.
What is the thing? Forgive me for not knowing, but the thing that you sent me, I think on Sunday, right? Was that related to the Howie and Scott thing? Maybe.
No, like that's just a 404 jam. I'm working on. So I'm. I think I may have alluded to this elsewhere on the show, but like, so post fight songs, my main project just in my own head is, and this relates to you, I'm making a solo MS Riot album on the 404 Mark II. Yeah. As my way of like learning that instrument. And the way I found into it is really those. So what I needed to learn to make my own vocal samples, because I feel like I can't ask rappers for vocal samples like over and over again. And I also don't want, I love collaboration, but I also need solo stuff that I can just make progress on when I want to, right? And not be
like beholden to
emailing
other
people
people's
or
lives
whatever.
and stuff. Yeah. Yep.
So I definitely want to do both. And I want to do more remixes and stuff, and I want to make beats for other people. But for this, like, I wanted to just make my own vocal samples. And so, I mean, I started this a little bit before I read my first Raymond Chandler novel at your recommendation. But like, we had so much fun, like making little 2 or 4 line hooks out of like Raymond Chandler lines and stuff. And the song I sent you isn't a Chandler, but like, I'm just trying to get to 10 songs produced on the 404 Mark II with my own vocal samples. And like, some of them, I don't even know what to call it. Like, some of it's definitely like almost instrumental hip hop with a vocal sample. Yeah. But some of it, like the one I sent you, you couldn't call that hip hop at all, I don't think.
No, I don't know. I honestly,
I don't know what you call it.
I don't know what you call it either. I've been thinking about it since you sent it to me, and I just kept thinking about, it's not like a art, like a avant-garde art piece. It's not, but it's not untraditional. Like, there are parts, there are themes. It's got like the ingredients of a pop song in a way, but put together in the most, it's like making stew in a boot. Like, it's totally unintuitive. The whole thing, I was like, like nothing was really intuitive to me. And it made, I'm sure, good sense to you or whatever while you're doing it, but it was like really interesting. I literally have never heard any music like that before, ever.
We've talked about it enough. I will put a rough mix. This is a work in progress, but I will put, so I know you got to go. We'll wrap the show up here. We'll hear a VanRipper and Galactifader track. And I will also play a very rough mix. This is a work in progress of the song we're talking about, which has the working title of Time Organ. Mm-hmm. And
awesome.
Yeah, but like I don't know if it makes sense. Like, each piece on the 404, it's done more than I even hoped in terms of like changing my ears and how I listen to things and opening up my imagination, because on the 404, I start basically with a sample, typically an instrumental sample. Sometimes I start with a vocal sample and build everything else around it kind of step by step. So like, it's a process of thinking like, okay, I've identified a sample. What is the next thing that can go with this? So that might be a drum beat, or it might be a bass line.
Sure.
And then, but I have no idea what's coming third and fourth at that stage. It's one sound at a time. And that's one of the things that's been really fun, is because it really has opened up my imagination to not make any assumptions about what that next sound needs to be.
That's awesome.
It could be, and I really think in terms of like, should it be high frequency? Should it be low frequency? Should it be percussive? Should it be sustained? I'm thinking about it in this kind of abstract synth sort of terms. Yeah. And then backing into like, well, then how am I going to create that sound? Am I going to use a guitar? Am I going to find another sample? Right. And that's been super, super fun. And that's why like these songs are taking a very twisty path to get where they end up, because it's this total playground.
That's neat. Along with it being a playground, it feels like, right, the kind of thing that a vocal sample is, or a guitar sample is, in a traditional song, it would be something that would be an overdub, maybe at the end of the recording process, that to add color or vibe or something. And so in a way, it's sort of like you're writing songs from the inside out or something. So like maybe like the traditional hook or the structure of it is like maybe one of the last things you think of or something. I don't know. It's just really fascinating, which probably is, again, a lot of fun. Like when you do something like that in a new way, you feel like there are no rules, because there aren't, but you really feel it. And then you're like, I'm going to do whatever feels right, however it ends up. And that'll be really rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a difference, to me at least, between telling myself there's no rules, but like if I'm holding a guitar,
there's rules.
There's kind of some rules, or at least some expectations that it's really hard to break out of. And the sampler has been amazing for truly breaking out of some of those expectations and approaching it with a much more just an empty mindset of just like, I'm listening. I'm like, what type of sound will sound cool with this? And being much more open to what the answer to that might be.
Right. The rules. I don't know. It's sort of like a tough thing, but sitting down with a guitar, my thought is always the last thing I would want to come up with or do right now or settle on right now is something that I think is really obvious or cliche. Whether that be a chord progression or a lyric or something like that. I'm just like, I want to avoid that at all costs. And sometimes that can veer you away from things that actually might be really cool to do in a sort of different way. But I will go out of my way to get away from like certain progressions that seem like when you listen to it, you're like, I know what chord's next. I know the next 4 chords based on, these 2 or something.
Yeah, I kind of share that. And that can be, it's fun to play with rules and fun to play with expectations. And I mean, we're all kind of, no one is 100% following expectations or 100% breaking them. You're dialing in a balance, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's fun to play with that. And, if you find yourself leaning one direction or the other, try flipping it and seeing where that takes you.
To your point, it's neat to have, you still have rules, but there's one rule or, a parameter, which is like, this song is like going to heavily feature the harmonica or something, whatever it is. And then it doesn't really, then you're not like limiting yourself in any other way other than got to make space for that ripping harmonica solo.
Absolutely. Yeah. I find that type of structure really fun and helpful to have like 1 or 2 parameters or rules that I just put on myself, to give me a direction. Cause like, that totally blank slate, it's really hard.
It is really hard. But like, even mostly with writing, writing's great. I approach it for some reason so much differently than I approach music. I do so much more like pre-work and drafting and like I'll do a million things. But it's neat to get a prompt that like this, it has to start with this sentence or it has to end up here or it's got to feature this event or something like that. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean those writing exercises are good, whether you release or publish or whatever the results of it or not. I think that just the exercise and the practice is good.
Absolutely. And there's one thing I meant to say before we end. I want to make sure I don't forget, which is something I think about a lot is, so favorite writer, Raymond Chandler, didn't actually get anything published until he was about 50 or so. And I think that's about when he'd written short stories before that were published in like Black Mask, pulp comics. But he didn't actually start doing novels until he was well older. It's a bummer because then he died before he could like write, 10 more of them or something. But I love, it's not like, oh, wow, I can still make it at, 50. It's not about that. It's like this guy never gave up and he was like still making plans at that age, like still having new ideas and new goals and stuff like that, which I think is so cool and still trying to find his voice. So
absolutely. And doing personal best, right? Like his last novel published posthumously, I think widely agreed is his best. It's certainly a great one.
Right.
And a personal best in some areas, even if, if someone has a different favorite, obviously that's totally fine. But Long Goodbye, incredible.
It's so good. Yeah.
Start with a different one. I think it's good to build up. If you're going to read some Chandler, and I recommend that you do, read a couple, 3 of the earlier ones before you read The Long Goodbye.
Yeah. The Long Goodbye is like his change is going to come. I don't know. I don't know how else to put that, but it's like that's his, like, I think like his opus, if I want to use a bad journalism term, but right. But they're all fun, which is great. It's an opus, but every single book, the short ones and the long ones, are all fun. Like Lady in the Lake, Big Sleep, all of them are like, the sentences are just a joy. So anyway.
And he's another, he illustrates another thing we were talking about, which is just his earlier pulp kind of short story work. A lot of expectations in that kind of genre, right? Like, it's all a little more, you got to hit some points, and he played with that, and that informed where he took his writing later when he was more free to do what he wanted.
Right. And in some ways that, like, still haven't been, there are a lot of writers that you could say are very similar to him, but even the most similar are very different. Yeah. Especially just in his tone and voice. Like, it's wild. So
cool. Cory, great to see you. Great to talk.
Yeah.
We should do it again
super
soon.
Good to see you. Loved it. Listeners,
have a great week. We'll be back at you next week on our regular schedule with an incredible guest, Jazz. So really looking forward to bringing that to you. And until then, this has been the Long Play Listening Party. We're going out on some VanRipper and Galactifader. Here we go.
Yeah, thank you.
Put a mask on my face, pillowcase, no creases. Hitting every house, handing out full sizes. Save your toothpaste, don't like surprises. Step out at dusk, game face light fading. Feel the light breeze, Hallows Eve leaves changing. I'm a fucking Care Bear. So's my wife and my daughter, tender-hearted motherfucker next year. Harry Potter, first house on the block, 8 o'clock, knock, knock, ding dong. Goddamn it, doorbell, tick tock. Don't try to act like you're not just sitting in your dark living room. Hurry up, not kidding. Phantom family, goblin key. Ghosted nights and werewolf trials. We go beast mode, Halloween. These Reese's Pieces by the rest in peace. Phantom family, goblin key. Ghosted nights and werewolf trials. We go beast mode, Halloween. These Reese's Pieces by the rest in peace. Left, get them all, no sweat, fat sack full of treats, not done, not yet, can't stop, won't stop till I get type 2. Move aside, little buddy, let me show you what it do. Surprise, motherfucker, I'm a sucker MC, big time, blow pop, dumb, that's me. Big man about town, Mr. Number One snacker, most death, nothing left but an M&M ripper. Move all the loot back to the stash spot. 35th Street, no sound, door locked. Pile it up, midnight on the dot. At the bottom of the bag, what's that? Pop rocks. Middle of the night, wake up, not right. Dealing with the sugar high times 4T5. Start seeing shit, dead guy but alive. Goes to Halloween, future rub eyes, no lie. Beckons me out of the window, we fly. Look down at the city, no moon, black sky. Feet hit the ground, look down, graveside. Read my name on the stone, no shit, God, why? Have to change my ways, okay, that's fine. Ask the Mr. Spooky guy, is there still time? My dude nods his head, alright, won't die till I go beast mode next Halloween night. Phantom family, goblin key. Ghosted nights and werewolf trials. We go beast mode, Halloween. These Reese's Pieces by the rest in peace. Phantom family, goblin key. Ghosted nights and werewolf trials. We go beast mode, Halloween. These Reese's Pieces by the rest in peace.
Darkest part of winter to longest day. I can't escape. No ghost repair our time. I can't escape. I can't escape. I can't escape from the darkest no ghost repair our time. I can't escape. No ghost repair